Welcome, everyone, to the championship of the Race Report. I'm Jeff Baki Jr. alongside my co-host Scott Ickes.
Yeah, Jeff, we had a pretty exciting race at Homestead this week.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it quite exciting. I mean, there was a lot of great racing up towards the front of the field before all these issues started to happen. We had crazy engine failures. Several trucks got out of the race. I think it was the most drivers we've seen in one particular race that had an engine failure. And then we had a fluke accident that probably shouldn't have happened. And all this stuff happened that made the race a weird and it had a weary feel to it. And we had 3 cars finish. That was myself, Eric Micke, and then we had you, Scott. You finished third, and it was we had one of the championship contenders, Steve Anders. He had a great season, and for him to go out with an engine failure is just it's almost ironic because he had a bad start in Daytona, got on the hook. They didn't have a great finish there, and then he built up, got, I believe it was 3 wins this season. They were strong, and then to be right there in the mix in Homestead and have the problems that they did, it was just disappointing and just a bad way for them guys to end their season.
Yeah, if anybody's new to the league and racing, here we always end the season at Homestead, and over the past couple seasons we've seen drivers that maybe push the limits a little too much in the last race. You're trying to get the most out of your team to try to get the last victory, so maybe that was something that was included in last race last Tuesday night. So it was sad to see all the drivers having problems, but overall, it was a pretty clean race. I think we only had a couple cautions, and it was really playing out the fuel mileage.
Yes, we had 1 caution for 2 laps, and you brought up fuel mileage. There's one guy who came to Homestead with a game plan, and he executed it perfectly, and that's Eric Micke. Eric Micke's making his debut on the Race Report this evening, and we got him in the studio. How are you doing tonight, Eric?
I'm doing good. First of all, congratulations on the championship, Scott. You too on your strong season. It was disappointing to see Stevie's run come to an end. I was really pulling for him all season long, and that was great to see.
Yeah, I think we all were. He's been the most popular driver in this league several years in a row up until this past year, and he's built up all this respect for everybody. And we see that we have, I guess you'd call it, the popular driver having success in the league, and it really does a lot for everybody around him. And you mentioned it was hard to see him like that, but let's talk about you for a minute. Your strategy yesterday. The race is done and over with. We won't be going back to the Truck Series. Do you want to tell the fans maybe how it's, because you mentioned it to some of us after the race. Me and you got together. We talked after the race, and you told me that it was it was awesome to have the race play out perfectly like that. And you obviously had a plan going into that. You mind sharing what the plan maybe was for the viewers out there?
Yeah, well, obviously I wasn't going for any kind of a championship. I didn't have anything but wanting to get the win and, our little battle for the all-time wins record. That was really only there for that. So practicing before the race, I just made sure I knew the fuel mileage and got the truck handling right. I thought that the truck was going to be good at the start, but we started the race and it was just really, really tight. I couldn't do anything with it. So instead of panicking over driving, I just kind of waited until I could fix it on pit stops. And the few pit stops we had, I got the speed where I needed it to be and was able to be just as fast as the leaders and stayed in touch, and it all worked out. You and Jason ended up, I think, pitting a few laps too early, and you guys had me questioning my strategy, but I just decided to stick to my game plan. Jason unfortunately blew an engine, but by fuel mileage, I won it, and we had the speed, and it just all came together. The speed, durability, fuel mileage. It was just strange that a random one-off race like that just went that perfectly.
Yeah, it really was strange. In the middle of that race, we know what was going on. We had drivers that were really making a lot of mistakes. They were getting loose, and we had a couple of drivers who were having pitting problems and actually kind of clogged up the field in turn 4. What was your mindset when that all happened down there?
I was behind all of that. I saw it happen. It wasn't too far ahead of me when I got it up to them. It had already been done, and it was actually Andrew who was trying to get to pit road, and apparently nobody heard him communicate that he was coming in that time, and I think it was Jason and Jesus didn't have anywhere to go and got into him. I got to the scene of the accident as Andrew was entering pit road, and Jason and Jesus were getting their trucks going again. It definitely helped out my cause, bringing the fact that we ended up having that caution, and I know that probably played a part in his engine failure. But I was just getting on pit road has been an issue for me, and I actually lost a bunch of time getting on and off of pit road, even after getting a lot better at it in the few races I did this season. So it's tricky.
Your win in Homestead Tuesday night was your 16th career win, and that's phenomenal, by the way, and great job on getting that all-time win record. Me and you've been fighting out, and you came out the better man. I'll say it, you were the better man. You got it, and you guys came to Homestead with the game plan, and it paid off, just like you had mentioned and you explained. Knowing that we're not having a Camping World Truck Series in the near future, and knowing that we have all this off time and the uncertainty of the future of this series, having that win record, what does that mean to you?
Well, it means a lot because the Truck Series, since I started racing here, it has been my favorite series. It seemed like it has been the most competitive, and you didn't need to have the top-notch setup in order to win those races, and it was more of came down to driver ability to put a full race together from start to finish, and to be able to do that more times and get the win more times than anybody else. And to have the stats that I do in that series, it's just, I take a lot of pride in that. Winning the first race of the series ever, winning the final race, it's just really cool to be able to do that in one of the series. It's been my best series.
Now, there was an official announcement last night that the OCRL will be bringing back the Nationwide Series. We know you really like the Nationwide Series. How excited are you for those cars coming back?
I'm pretty excited. We've got some other things going on with our World Motorsports program, and we are doing some Super GT races, Formula One. We're all over the place, but I do plan on being full-time in that Nationwide Series with the newly branded team that we'll be announcing in the next week. And I'm looking to get a teammate. I'd love to go out there and take home a second Nationwide championship, but I'm just hoping to get back to some good oval racing to kind of balance out the road course racing, and hopefully the Cup Series will get started up soon.
Right, and the Nationwide Series, there hasn't been any official announcement on the schedule, but being that we're the reporters now and stuff, we kind of get the inside scoop on maybe what's going inside. We did hear a little bit of rumors about maybe how the schedule's going to be decided, and this is going to be the season of the fans. And what they're going to do is they're going to pick 4 popular tracks, and they're going to have a panel submit 6. And what would be your 6 tracks that you would submit?
My 6 tracks, I'd have to go ahead and say Watkins Glen would definitely be one of them. The ovals are fun, but it's still like the stock car racing on Watkins Glen, and between that and Montreal, Watkins Glen will provide for the better, closer racing, I think. Besides that, there's definitely Richmond. I'd love to go to Richmond. Darlington, Phoenix, definitely New Hampshire. Just some of the challenging tracks, but that isn't all about keeping the pedal to the metal the entire time because we do that at Daytona and Talladega already. So I just some challenging tracks, but I would also like to see some of the intermediate tracks, maybe like Kansas, be on there. So that's what I'm looking for.
Well, that's a great choice of tracks you got there, and who knows, we could be the guys up top could be listening in on this, and that'd be the way they make their decision, listening in on our race report, and I'm sure that they're going to take everybody's selective tracks into consideration to make the best possible schedule that they can, and it's going to be an exciting season. And would you mind that we're going to talk more about the race that we had Tuesday evening and then talk more about the Nationwide Series later on the show? Would you mind sticking around and discussing it with us?
Yeah, no problem.
All right, great. And on the other side of the commercial break, we're going to be talking about the Ford 200 and Homestead-Miami Speedway.
This is Steve Anders, driver of the 99 Aflac Ford Fusion. Stay tuned. There's more coming on the Online Racing Network.
And we're back on the race report. Scott, when we first got to Homestead this past weekend, everybody seemed like in practice, if they weren't off the pace, they were fighting loose conditions. Do you maybe have an explanation to, matter of fact, what was your truck like off the truck?
We were struggling. Not a lot as far as I thought at first, but throughout the weekend we found out that we really were slower than our competition. If you remember back at Charlotte, I think I remember telling the fans that I had a pushy-loose truck, which means, going into the corners, you're turning your truck, and the more you turn it, the more it goes up the hill, and the more the rear end wants to slide out into the wall. And we had a really bad condition at Charlotte, and we were never really able to fix it. And so not being able to fix it at Charlotte, we didn't really be able to fix it at Homestead. We did a couple adjustments. We got together with Stevie, and we kind of fixed the problem, actually, in the final practice before the race. But overall, it seemed like it was a really loose track out there. I don't know how you guys perceived the track, but for us, it just seemed like it was really loose condition.
Yeah, now, Eric, you guys had mentioned that maybe your truck was tighter than it should have been at the start of the race. The first time you guys set in practice, what was your truck handling like?
The setup we put in the truck for Tuesday night was actually really close to what I ran in the Nationwide race last season, and in the Nationwide race it was just a terrible race for me. I kept spinning out all over the place because it was so loose. I made a few adjustments just because not being in Homestead, I was just a little timid to go out there with a truck that I knew was going to be loose. I didn't want to wreck it. But it was driving fine in practice, and I never really experienced any loose conditions. I was really surprised when the race started and I couldn't get the thing to turn. It was really driving perfectly before the race, and then really tight when the race started, and then after a few adjustments in pit road, it was driving pretty good. Didn't have any loose issues with it. So I don't know what was different about ours that made it tighter than everybody else.
Yeah, we talked, as in me and Jason, had talked about maybe how his truck was handling and mine was handling after the race. He had come up to me and congratulated me. We talked a little bit, and me and him were discussing the different situations, and he said if I would have lost the engine or not, it didn't matter because Eric was coming. He knew you were there, and he had nothing but good things to say, and you know the history between you two. I know the history between you. I'm sure Scott does too, and he didn't have not a bad thing to say. He said he's gained a lot of respect for you over the past few races, and he was looking forward to having you back here full time. And the situation with maybe the way the looseness was, the sand builds up on the track over time. We get there, and it burns as we get more and more practice on there, we get more grip, we get less deals. I know that when we unloaded the truck for the first time, it was really loose in the center of the corner, and it just got looser and looser and looser, and that's where we struggled, was the center of the corner. And I feel like in the race we had gotten it pretty decent, but in the race we discussed earlier, we only had one caution. That was for 2 laps, and that's when Andrew had communication problems. The spotters weren't communicating the way they should have on top of the building there, and the two leaders at the point, they were running nose to tail, actually. It was Jason and Jesus, and they all got stacked up behind him, and it caused them to get damage, and Jesus had too much damage to even go on at that point, and it was a decent race. I think the top 4 guys stayed in touch there, and it was I know I enjoyed racing you, Eric, side by side. I mean, I get the run off. I thought at one point in time, I was like, shoot, I got a better truck than him. And then I don't know what happened. You guys worked hard in the pits and got your truck to be in race-winning condition. So that was fun to have at that point. And then once everybody kind of got bobbled up, and it just seemed like it was a 2 or 3 car game at that point. And it wasn't really an exciting race for the fans. I'm sorry for that, because it had a lot of potential to start off with. We had great racing, and Scott, you were struggling the entire race, matter of fact, and maybe you got a little bit more colorful on the radio as you have in weeks past.
A little bit. We went into that race, and I knew that I didn't have the handling truck or the speed. So we knew, I just told my crew, we're going to have to do it. We got to get up front. I mean, I know the truck's handling bad, but whatever we can do, 2 tires, no tires, fuel, whatever, we just got to get up front. And we were battling actually with Eric's brother Andrew for a while in the back, and my truck just did not handle well with other trucks. I don't know what was going on, but I did not have any rear grip. It felt like ice out there whenever I touched the gas pedal. So we were just struggling our race. But, the reason why you stick into races is for the reason that the results, we got a 3rd place finish out of it. So that's pretty good at Homestead, since I haven't made too many appearances there. But definitely would like the truck to be a little better. But that's what racing is. Sometimes you have a good truck, sometimes you have a bad. So you just got to take what you got.
Yes, and prior to this past Tuesday's race at Homestead, you had only led a few laps, and you didn't help that cause yesterday. This is one of the 3 tracks of the season that you did not lead a lap at. The others, Michigan and Daytona earlier in the season, you failed to lead a lap at, but other than that, you at least led 1 lap at all the other tracks. And this is actually the first season where we haven't had a driver lead every lap, and as honestly that might sound, it's not that hard when you have 10 people showing up to the race. But this season, just to show how competitive that it was, not every driver led a lap at every single track, and we've seen this tradition season after season where there's at least 1 or 2 drivers that were able to get close to it. And I was looking at the stats earlier, and I don't think anybody came remotely close. Looking at Scott's statistics here, he missed 3 races, and I think he's one of the closest, honestly, to be able to pull that one off. And the race went out. We had drivers such as people that had good trucks. Shawnee qualified 5th. He finished 10th after blowing up really early in the race, and that's a team that looked like it had potential too.
Yeah, that team really, they've been kicking it off right at the end of the season. They're running good in qualifying and race. I really thought that they had a really good shot of running good last night, but unfortunately they had some engine problems and they weren't able to. Also in the race we had Chris Hiller. He had problems just kind of staying on the track. It seemed like he was real loose, and then he got a pit road penalty, and unfortunately they booted him off the track because he was just too slow.
Yeah, we had mentioned the engine failures. Jason Gaines, Andrew Micke, and Steve Enders were all victim of those engine failures. And talking about that, I was explaining to some of my teammates and people at the shop earlier today before we came to the studio here, just explaining maybe why the engine failures were there. And you said it's desperation, that the teams are trying to get that last win, trying to go out with a bang, so to speak. And I think that our situation was, to run that track comfortably, you need to be able to have the high RPMs in the corner. So you tend to push it especially at a track like that. And it's a really unique track. There's not one out there that's like it. So you got to this is one of the tracks you have to set the engine up. I was talking to Sean Sadler before the race, and he told me that just the littlest change in the differential can change the handling of your car, and that's what it does. And I think that's how a lot of teams have been setting their their trucks up here, and unfortunately, we've seen it more this year at this track than others this season. Eric, did you have any opinions on maybe why the engine failures were the way they were?
I think it's possible, that theory that people are just trying to push it with higher RPMs. Because if you don't push with higher RPMs throughout the entire track and throughout the corners, then you might have to shift down to third gear just to get through the corner as fast as possible, which is unneeded stress on the engine that way too. We were pushing it, but I knew I was pushing it from the start. Even though we were really tight at the start, we were better than the fourth place that we were running, but I was letting off. I wasn't letting the engine get to reach its top speed down the straights. I was really taking it easy and waited until about 50 to go before I really decided that I was going to push anything. So I think if maybe the teams managed their engines a little better throughout the race, then we might not have seen that kind of issue. But yeah, I think that it was the last race of the season. People were trying different things just to try to get something good to go out on. And seems like for the most part it didn't pay off.
So at the end of our race at Homestead Tuesday night, we had you, Eric, in first. Jeff Baki Jr. finished second. I finished third. Jason Gaines finished fourth. And Andrew Micke rounded out the top 5.
And the rest of the top 10 can be seen on your screen there. You can look for your favorite driver there and see where he finished. And on the other side of the break, we're going to pick it up with the news center, and we're going to close out this edition of the Race Report.
This is Scott Ickes, driver of the number 17 Valvoline Ford Fusion. Stay tuned. There's more coming on the Online Racing Network. Welcome back to the OCRL Race-Report. I'm here in the news center. We have Ford winning their first championship in the Camping World Truck Series.
Yes, and it was a really close battle. There was 5 wins for Ford, 5 wins for Chevy, and it just seemed like in the very end, Ford was a little bit better than the Chevrolet teams there when they needed it by just 2 points. It's the closest manufacturers battle we've ever had in the league. That's Sprint Cup Series, Nationwide Series, and then the Camping World Truck Series. And it's the first time ever that Chevrolet has lost to any other manufacturer. And me being a Chevy driver, I know that my team won't be getting that bonus this season, but that's completely fine with me because what this does for the sport is amazing. It's good to see some different mix-ups there. You got Ford coming out of nowhere. We had talked about the story that was released earlier this week. Zero Motorsports, Michael Gruby, he didn't even know he was running Fords until a week before the Daytona race, and he picked you and Stevie up, and they changed over Fords and everything within a matter of a few days. So to see that team be as successful as it was Fords, and for Ford to pick up their first championship, it's great, and I applaud them, their team and their efforts. Eric, you being a Chevy team owner, you should be able to comment on this one too.
Yeah, obviously you'd like to see it come to the manufacturer that you're driving for, but from the outside perspective, from the fans' perspective, from the sports perspective, it is good to see the competition there, that it's not just handed to the Chevy drivers, because there are a lot more Chevys than there are any other manufacturer. So I would assume that'd be less of a draw for people to come to the sport if one manufacturer is dominating all the time. So it's good to see Ford get that championship for the sports, from the sports perspective. I know I had a great relationship with them and did what I could to bring them all the wins and championships I could when I first came here and started racing in the Fords, but things didn't work out, and we ended up moving around to different manufacturers, and we've been with Chevy for a while now.
Now moving forward, after the race last night, hold on. Alright. Moving forward, after Tuesday night's truck race, we had Jeff Baki Jr., championship winner of this series. Jeff, how does it feel being the championship winner?
I guess the the best way to say it would be honored. I feel honored to represent the series, and I know Eric didn't run the entire schedule, but when you beat guys like him and then you and Stevie, it's awesome to actually have to fight for it. I didn't think midway through the season that we had anything for the championship, and then we had a couple good runs there at the end, and it just propelled us. I mean, you won 3 races, or you won 2 races. Stevie won 3, and I won the least out of it all. And to pull it off, it was a. I'm just honored. I'm really thankful to be able to have the opportunities that I have in this league and to represent everybody here. It's pretty cool, and Eric's the best of the best. He's done it 2 times, and it's it's just an honor. I'm still in shock. It hasn't sunk in yet, I don't think.
Yeah, it was a really close battle. I was really excited about how close the points were at the end of the season coming down there at Homestead, because most of the time we'll only have 2, or even the leader will only have to do so much to win a championship. But really, last night, Tuesday night, it came down to you had to run the entire race. There was no mistakes you can make, because if you made a mistake, I could jump in, and if both of us made a mistake, Stevie could jump in. So it was just the points battle was always switching throughout the entire race.
Yeah, and that's one reason I don't like Homestead, is because when you're at Homestead, you're actually working. there's a lot more than just driving that you usually have to do. You got to think, you got to process, you got to focus on where your competitors are, at least the one that you're racing for in the championship, and it's really hard. Eric, you've been in that situation before.
Yeah, I'm nationwide, winning the nationwide championship last year. I was really conscious of where everybody was, and I mean, even when you go into the last race and you know that, all you need is a 5th place finish and you've averaged a 3rd place finish the entire season, you can't help but think that something's going to go wrong, or that something unexpected is going to happen, and you're going to be, in trouble. So to see a 3-way battle for the championship the way that this came down to, that was really cool. Especially to see Jeff fighting other guys than just me for the championship. That was nice to see too. So hopefully we can keep that going into the nationwide series. And I just want to say before we wrap this up that you guys might have another contender on your hands, because Andrew over here has been on a roll. He's won 2 of the last 4 World of Outlaws series events, and he just today beat myself and about 7 or 8 other guys to get his first ever Super GT win in the ARL, which I have yet to do that. And he spanked the field today over there. So he's really on a roll, and I can see him stepping his game up for the nationwide series.
Before we let you go, Eric, any last words about that win last night? Anybody you want to thank?
I gotta thank the team and the sponsors, the One Main Financial. We're taking them to the nationwide series with us, and all the other sponsors that we had we're bringing to the nationwide series with us. I want to congratulate Jeff on his championship one more time, and maybe we'll get back. Maybe I'll have to go back after that truck series championship run if that ever gets going again.
Well, I appreciate it, Eric. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and we hope to carry this on in the Nationwide Series. And you had mentioned your brother being there. He's got 3 wins in the Nationwide Series in his career, and that's one of the most. He's averaged a win every season, minus his rookie season in the Nationwide Series. I would not be surprised to see him a contender in the Nationwide Series, because he's been very successful there. He knows what he's doing, and it's great to have you 2 around. It may not seem like it, but I think we need you here, and it's like I said, it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks. It's definitely not been the easiest relationship between us and the OCRL, but yeah, it's just difficult, because when you've got so many different people that are so passionate in so many different ways, there's just a lot of clashing that goes on, and but I mean, in the long run, you'd rather have that than have people who don't care enough to, bother fighting for what they want within a league or for a championship. You'd rather have the friction to deal with than not having the interest at all. So we'll just move forward, and hopefully we can just get more and more successful as a league altogether.
And we're going to have a week off and maybe have a few minute shows in between, but until the Nationwide Series picks up in Daytona, on behalf of everyone here at the OCRL Studios, it's been a great season in the Camping World Truck Series, and we can't wait to see you guys in 2 weeks in Daytona for the Nationwide Series. I'm Jeff Baki Jr.
And I'm Scott Ickes.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks at Daytona.